It's a snow day across portions of the southeast Ohio Valley and lower mid-Atlantic. Winter storm watches and winter weather advisories are up, and the snow is coming down. How much snow and ice can you expect? We'll dive into all the details in just a few minutes, plus some pretty big changes in the long range over the last 24 hours. We'll have a look at all of it coming up next. A new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World starts right now. Hi, folks, and welcome to the show today. My name is Jason Pritchard, and you're here for another snowy edition of Cold Rain's Weather World. I'm looking out the window right now. Snow is falling down, so it's a beautiful snowy day here in Morganton, North Carolina. And we've got some winter weather unfolding across portions of the East Coast, and we're going to dive into all the details here in just a few minutes. But I want to send a special welcome out to the folks that are here for the first time. If you're here, we talk about the weather that's ongoing. We talk about upcoming weather events and a few other things in between. So welcome to you all, and hopefully we'll have a good time today. Before we get started, please consider subscribing to the channel. That'll help us grow. If you leave a comment in the comment section, that will help as well, and we certainly encourage that. If there are questions that you have about the show today, just weather questions in general, or anything kind of in between, certainly put those in the comment section. Most importantly, if there's something that we can pray about, we're going to do that. I'm going to pray for all the requests that show up in the comment section, and hopefully others in the community will too. So if there's something going on in your life that we need to encourage you and walk alongside of you through it, we'll be happy to do that. I'll be happy to do that here. So please don't hesitate to leave any comments in the comment section, and hit that like button and turn the bell notification or the little bell icon. If you click that, it'll turn notifications on, and you'll get notified when these new, when I drop a new video. So without further ado, we're going to start the show as we always do with the trivia question. Now, we've got a lot of cold air in the pattern, and we're likely to continue to see that over the coming days. And so our question today has to do with cold air. So here it is. What is the coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth? Now, you can record temperature via satellite data, but we're talking about thermometer data today. So actually observed temperatures with an observation device. And so here are the possible answers. List them. If you know the answer, list it in the comment section. Otherwise, just keep it in your mind, and we'll get to it at the end of the show. So A, minus 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That would be cold. B, 0 Kelvin. That would be really cold. C, minus 149.4, or D, pass. You don't always have to choose an answer at Cold Rain's Weather World. You can sometimes pass if you want to. So we'll have the answer at the end of the show. And so with that, let's go ahead and check out our National Weather Service alerts page. So this is a page that we look at every day to see what kind of alerts and warnings and watches are going on. And boy, you can really see it here in the middle of the country. We've got cold weather alerts all up and down the central third of the country. Here, look at this. Very, very cold air coming in here. Extreme cold warnings in dark blue. Winter weather advisories over here. And, and then back toward the east, we've got winter storm watches. And, well, we don't have any watches. We've got winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings up. The winter storm warnings are in pink. And then in New England, you finally get a break. There are no hazards in effect up there. So that's good. Now, we're going to jump over here quickly and take a look at the snowfall reports from yesterday. So we looked at this area in here in Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and upper portions of Oklahoma and on into the eastern sections from there. And we talked about how the bulk of the area was looking pretty good to pick up anywhere between 4 and 8, maybe even as much as 10 inches of snow in spots. And we saw that play out. This was a pretty easy forecast. All of this was kind of coming together. The models tend to waffle around with these snow footprint maps and all of that stuff in terms of their totals. But generally speaking, I think that verified pretty well. 4 to 6 inches in here where you see the dark blue. Some of these spots reported 8 to 12 inches. And these darker orange, 6 to 8, and the lighter kind of yellow. And so this is where we expected the heaviest snow to fall, kind of in this zone, and we saw that play out. So very very easy to kind of forecast this. Not a lot of variability with the strength of the system and how things are coming together. Totally different story back east, and we're going to see all of that here in just a second. And this is going to be a little bit of a shorter show. And as we go through the show today, by the way, I meant to say that we will I'll add timestamps in the comments section down below, so you can just skip to the part that's important to you. But we're going to go ahead and jump over into the southeast, where things are starting to crank up here. So we can see our radar image here. So I want to show you a couple things here. We talked about this big area of convection down along the Gulf. And so we see that playing out. You can't really see way back. We don't have radar imagery down here, but there's a big line of storms back kind of oriented this way. And what this does when this forms and you get these winter situations is you get moisture coming up. These low pressure systems develop, and they want to come along toward the east, and they want to pull in around the center of the circulation. So if you've got a low pressure like this that's kind of moving along this way, it's going to pull in this warm, moist air off the Gulf. That's what's going to be your moisture feed to generate precipitation. And so what you see here with these big lines of storms developing out here, if they're oriented kind of east to west or south west to northeast, they block your moisture transport. And look what happens. You get this big kind of donut into this area where you've got lesser amounts of precipitation. And so that's what's going on here. I'm up in Morganton, or right around where I've drawn this line. And I'm looking out the window. There's just some very light snow falling. These little radar returns are coming in, but you're seeing kind of you're seeing a little bit more in the way of banding setting up here. We talked about this yesterday. Remember frontogenesis? So we've got a little bit of frontogenesis going on in this area here. This is creating a boundary above our heads, and it's creating convergence, and you get lift, and you're starting to see a little bit of heavier returns working in here. And I've looked at some of the observations, and so we've got snow starting to break out, snow starting to be reported in this area here. We'll look at temperature profiles in a minute. Certainly snow reports back in here, not heavy. None of this is really heavy, but you're seeing some sleet reports in this area where these returns are showing up, and some flurries. You're probably looking out your window now in Cary, Holly Springs, Fuquay, Raleigh, Falls Lake area, and you're seeing flurries out the window, maybe even some light snow at times. And so that's going to pick up as we go through the day. So let's go on ahead and take a look at our water vapor imagery. Sometimes we show the satellite, that shows all the different clouds. We're just looking at lower level water vapor, and you can see really well that line of thunderstorms showing up here that we talked about. There's no radar sites out here, so we use satellites and water vapor to kind of determine what's going on. So we've got a big cluster of convection, excuse me, good activity here in the southern jet that's just streaming in from Mexico through the Gulf of whatever this is called now, and then up here toward North Carolina and the Carolinas and the Southeast. We've also got this feature in the upper level part. Oh, it's an upper level feature. We're looking at the water vapor loop, but it shows up well here. So this is an upper level low. This is going to come in and eventually merge with this storm system, but way out here. So the fish are going to get a really nice storm out of this. This looked like a couple days ago. This was going to merge here and throw a bunch of moisture back in here and up into the upper mid-Atlantic and Northeast. That's just not going to happen now. So we're dealing with a situation where you've got a low here. It's going to reform. It's actually in the process of doing so here off of the Georgia coast. And then it's going to kind of scoot out like this. So a little bit of a weaker system, but you can see that reflected, all that moisture streaming in the form of clouds into the southeast. So taking a look at our temperatures, we see temperatures running in, this is about 9 o'clock, I think. So you're looking at temperatures running here in the 30s to 20s up here toward the border of Virginia, well below freezing in this part of the state, and down here towards South Carolina, everybody's above freezing. Some spots into the 40s, back into the foothills. Where I'm at, we're at 33, 34. This is going to change throughout the day, and this will not, surface temperatures in the mid 30s are not going to prohibit snow from falling to the ground, assuming it's falling up there and it's going through freezing layers, and we don't have a warm nose. So that's why I'm at 33 degrees here in Morganton, and I'm seeing snow falling out the window. If we look at our dew point temperatures, you can see dew points running in the upper to lower 20s. We'll call it teens along the border. A lot of times with these cold air damming situations, you get teens really flooding in here into Georgia and some single digits. It's very dry air. That's not the case this time. There is very dry air up there, but like we've talked about, the main high pressure is over the plains, and you get this little extension up into the northeast, and it drives cold air down down east of the Alps, but it does so in a little bit of a weaker fashion. The winds aren't really all that strong coming in through here, and so you can see these dew points kind of slow to filter in, but you can still see that signature, that footprint of the cold air damming. But as the precipitation falls, it's going to cool the lower layers of the atmosphere. So folks that are in the 30s, the mid 30s, they're going to cool into the low 30s, upper 20s as the day works on, and precipitation falls into this dry air. And so you'll see it'll maybe take a little while before the precipitation starts to fall in earnest. It has to saturate the column, but that's how it'll work, and you'll start to see snow pick up through the morning and into the afternoon. Now we're going to look at the NAM, and we've looked at this every day the last couple of days, and probably 3 days, and we're going to look at the HRRR, which is the really short range model. It runs and updates every hour, so you get kind of a new solution every hour. This is we're recording this about 10:15, 10:30. So this is the NAM's depiction. So this is at 10 o'clock. NAM's looking, so its temperature profile kind of lines up, right, with the analysis that we saw before, so that's pretty good. Watch the temperatures as we go through the day. See how they kind of plunge here in North Carolina. They're down into the 20s and the 30s, working into South Carolina. That goes on, we go on through the day, into the night, 12 hours out. Now our storm is done, but we're really in the, around freezing pretty much everywhere along upper South Carolina back up to the north. So no worries with any of this precipitation up in this area being frozen. It's going to be frozen. So if we look at our simulated radar, this is what the NAM thinks the radar is going to look like, and it's doing a pretty good job here. So at 10 o'clock, it's showing. Look here. So you see, we saw this a while ago. We saw this little area on the actual radar right in here. You see that? Saw another little area over here, so I drew a circle around that. And this is spotty. This whole big entire area is being robbed of moisture from this thunderstorm cluster down here in the Gulf. So that's pretty good. I have confidence, a little more confidence, when I see that the model actually showing reality in its forecast. And so that's good. So we'll delete these lines off and put this into motion and see what we can expect through the day. So as we get in here, it's 10 o'clock, advance it on over to noon. Precipitation really is starting to break out here. Now, this isn't heavy, this is light. So you see this, don't get all excited thinking that you're going to get 1 inch per hour snowfall rates. You're not. But you do see the NAM filling this in. So a lot of folks are going to start to see legitimate light to moderate snow for a few hours going on in through the day, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. We advance this on east. You can see kind of holes in the precipitation back here. The mountains and foothills. This is out of your hair, after we get to about 12 o'clock or so, and then on in through the rest of the afternoon. Maybe it hangs on back west a little bit longer than that, but we get on into 7. Let's see here. We're at 0Z, so this is 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Snow, ice, whatever this is falling here is still going on back toward the triangle. Low is really getting its act together out here. You can start to see convection. When you start to see thunderstorms forming around low pressure areas, that means they're getting a little bit stronger. And so you can, that's a good general kind of rule of thumb. And then you can kind of roll this forward. So snow falls out of the triangle, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. By midnight, kind of everything's wrapping up in the eastern portions of the triangle, Wake County, and so on. And then everything kind of pulls out by midnight and early through the early overnight hours, or late overnight hours, early overnight hours, depending on what day we're talking about. So early AM Thursday, all of that's gone. And then the NAM brings that other little upper level feature in and drops a little bit of precipitation in. This isn't going to be much, but if you see Thursday morning, some light snow, don't be surprised. Talked about this yesterday, that this strong upper level low is going to come through. Could even have some flurries down here toward Columbia, some light snow. I wouldn't expect more than a dusting out of this, if that. Few lucky spots maybe could pick up 1/4 of an inch, but it's not going to be a big deal. And then everything's gone by Thursday afternoon. All right. So that's how the NAM sees the precipitation. Well, how much is going to fall? All right. So back here, we see a nice gap back at Cold Rain's establishment. So we see back into the foothills, into close to Charlotte, up into the western Piedmont. I mean, it's not seeing much for Greensboro. We were looking at this yesterday thinking, hey, Greensboro's going to pick up 2 or 3 inches of snow. Greensboro could legitimately get out of this with an inch or less, and some of these areas might not even see more than a dusting. So we'll have to wait and see how the radar fills in. I am concerned because of all this convection down here robbing moisture. When you start to see these big areas here on the coast, this is due to the low pressure that I talked about reforming off of Georgia, like this, and then it moves on this in this sort of direction and on out to sea like that. So that's how it's going to go. And areas really east of Raleigh, down in here to the eastern Piedmont around I-95 and east, look to pick up the lion's share of the precipitation. Now, this isn't snow, this is just total precipitation. If we think about our snowfall ratio of 1 inch of precipitation equals 10 inches of snow, if all of this were to fall as snow, you'd have some pretty big snow totals back here. But probably what we're going to see is a lot of mixing, anywhere from this line on south. We'll look at a radar, what the NAM thinks in terms of the overall precipitation breakout. As a matter of fact, we can do that now. That way it'll kind of give you a good idea. But this is how the NAM sees the total precipitation falling. So 0.8 of an inch back here, kind of this I think this manila color here is like an inch. So you're really like looking at a nice QPF situation back to the east. So one more view here with the NAM in terms of its simulated radar. We looked at the radar a while ago. This is the precipitation type radar. So the same sort of image, but it just shows you how it sees the precipitation types unfolding. Blue is snow, orange or this color here, the salmon color, is sleet, and then you have purple is freezing rain. So look what the NAM does. It brings snow in here. So you're looking at snow breaking out across Greensboro, Winston-Salem, around 1 o'clock. And let me get my little marker here. I'll make it yellow so we can actually see. But you see what's happening here. Look, get this little warm nose that's developing. We talked about this last couple of days. So this area here is starting to see some precipitation type concerns. Above that is snow. This according to the NAM. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it's exactly right, but the NAM does a pretty good job with these warm noses. So we put this on into motion, and that warm nose starts to advance a little bit. So places like Falls Lake, getting close to Durham, and Harnett County, you're getting some mixed precipitation. All of Wake County is in the sleet zone, and that persists through a good portion of the storm. And then that line starts to retreat as the snow cranks up. The the column crashes behind the developing low, and you get colder air filtering in aloft, and you start to see that snow line advance back to the south and east. And that's what the NAM shows here. So Raleigh, it's very possible you guys could spend a lot of time mixing. And if that happens, that will cut down on the snow amounts. I mean, it still should be a nice little winter storm with mostly sleet. I'm not concerned about freezing rain in Raleigh. Down here toward the, toward Jacksonville and on over to the southeastern portion of North Carolina, that's where I would be more concerned about a little bit of glaze. No major ice storm, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a few limbs down. Could see some power outages, but it shouldn't be a massive ice storm. The QPF or the precipitation is just a little bit too light. And then it's all gone. And then that little system comes in tomorrow. You see how it kind of drops some snow, breaks apart. So that's the NAM, and we spend a lot of time with this. We don't need to look at big global models like the GFS and European. They're not quite as useful. So some of these higher resolution models do a good job at this range. So what does the NAM say for total snowfall? It breaks all of those things down I just showed you and puts together a snowfall map. And this was a little bit higher. This has kind of been decreasing over time as we've seen less precipitation develop. This is the 2-inch line where the blue is. So an inch or 2 in Wake County. Yikes, that's disappointing. And then it's still got its footprint up here, but it shows a little bit less in the way of snow in this area than it did yesterday in terms of the expansiveness of this. This is kind of decreased over time, but the footprint's still the same. This is where we expected the most snow all along, and it looks like that's still going to add up here. Up in Stewart, I've got some family up here. Not a lot, maybe not more than a 1/2 inch to an inch. Charlotte, kind of the same deal. Greensboro, same deal. So we're not looking at a big snow event here, unfortunately. Of course, sleet amounts are going to cut down on some of these totals here. And so we roll this on along and we're done. Now let's look at the sleet projections from the NAM. So we're going to roll this up, and you can see how the sleet really breaks out. That warm nose comes in, it stops just at the western portions of the triangle. Back here, you get a little bit more sleet. I'm not sure all of this is going to be sleet on the northern side. You might get a little bit here, but I'm thinking more snow in this area up here. But we'll see. We'll have to see how it plays out. And then freezing rain. You know, more freezing rain down here. This is showing 1/2 inch of freezing rain. I don't think that's going to end up being the case. This assumes that everything that falls is going to freeze on everything. And of course, you know that's not true. When the rain comes down, it takes a minute to freeze, and so some of it runs off. And so, you know, these scary maps that people like to post on social media, all of this is not going to be freezing rain, and we're not going to see 1/2 inch ice amounts for the most part down here. So that's your NAM roundup. Now we'll take a look at one more model, the HRRR. This is a very, very short range, high res model. And a lot of times these models do a fairly good job of capturing some of the convective elements that go on. Convection thunderstorm activity, as you know from summertime thunderstorms, they pop up and they go away, and they pop up and they go away. That's not necessarily the case here, but it does illustrate that some of these elements are a little bit more, while you've got a big storm and it's formed and it's moving across, some of the convection elements within the storm might burst for a while and then wane out. And so some of these short range models do a good job of capturing that, and they can be useful in terms of seeing those things that some of the other models may miss. And so we'll put this along and see if it kind of agrees with the NAM. And so it kind of does. We advance through the afternoon around 1 o'clock. It's showing a little less precipitation than the NAM. Maybe it's picking up on some of this moisture robbing convection down here in the Gulf, but just slowly advancing along. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, it's bringing similar footprint with the mixing. So really concerned about mixing back from Southern Pines all the way in through Wake County into the upper portions, Elizabeth City and north. I mean, you're looking at Moorhead. I mean, you're looking at snow for those areas, and then a little bit right along in there and to the south. You're looking more along the lines of some mixing as we go through, and then that crashes back. Look, so the HR actually has a little bit more. It gives a little bit more love in the snowfall department down here to Raleigh and Wake County, and so that crashes back. You get a little bit of a deform band forming back here, and so a little bit higher snow rates, and so that pushes on through, and everything kind of drives off by 1 o'clock, 1 a.m. And so there you go. It's a little faster, and we're starting to see some trends that kind of pull this stuff out faster. So again, decreasing QPF or precipitation. In the weather world, we call precipitation QPF, just because you don't have to say it. Say precipitation over and over and over. QPF is quantitative precipitation. See, I can't even say it. Quantitative precipitation forecast. That's what the models show. So the HRR shows precipitation here, or QPF, and it shows a little bit less. So the NAM had a little bit more back in this area, and the HRR shows a little bit less. So what is this? About 2 to 3/10 of an inch back here in this area. So if most of that snow, that's 3 inches, but it's probably going to cut down. So anyway, same general footprint of all of this. The biggest totals are either going to be up here in Norfolk down to northeast North Carolina, or really just right in that area. So that's how we see that playing out. The HR snowfall total map is sort of similar to the NAM, except it's got the footprint, the main footprint, shifted south of Norfolk down here in North Carolina. So anywhere, really, the bottom line takeaway, anywhere in this area needs to be on the lookout for potentially 6 to 8 inches of snow, maybe some higher if this thing really cranks and brings moisture back in off the Atlantic. Maybe you get a little bit of a higher total toward the coastal sections here. Back toward Raleigh, into the northern sections of the eastern Piedmont, you're probably looking at more of 1 here to as much as 4 or 5 up here in this area here, closer to where this snow is developing. Not much in the way of mixing issues up here. So one back down in here, back in here, we're just talking about a trace to a dusting, which is, not nothing. I mean, you could get a half an inch to an inch. So I'd say a trace to a half an inch to an inch up here in the foothills, western Piedmont area, and up into southern Virginia. Now up in this area, a few inches up in the mountains. I think looking like this is a very ugly map that I'm drawing here, but that's okay. You get the point. So anywhere in here, we're looking at probably two as much as 4 inches. The HRR kind of dries it out, but I think we'll probably see a little bit more precipitation fall in this area, particularly back here into West Virginia and Western Virginia. You can see that's probably where you see your 4-inch amounts. So that is my best guess about where the snowfall is going to occur and how it's going to unfold throughout the day. The last couple things that I have on the docket today are to talk about the extreme cold and the upcoming pattern. And so as you can see here, in the middle of the country, we've got all of those extreme cold warnings, cold advisories in light blue, very, very cold air here. If we look at our temperatures, bitterly cold, -15 in Bismarck, Billings, -18, -20s above the Canadian border where this lighter purple is, and then single digits all the way down here into Kansas. This is going to persist for another couple of days and sort of move east. If we look at the actual wind chills, and bring those on in. So right now, we're looking at -30s, -20s. A big portion of the country is dealing with wind chills well below zero. Overnight lows into the -20s with winds blowing. Even at a fairly light clip can still lead to extremely low wind chills. So anybody in this area here needs to take extra precaution when you go outside. Be very careful. This is going to persist for a couple of more days, but we're going to get some relief over as we head in toward the end of the work week into the weekend. So Kansas City, look at this, -12 wind chills, Tulsa -12, all the way into Texas. We're looking at down up toward Lubbock, we're looking at -6. So very cold, even wind chills in the single digits across much of the Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley. So very cold temperatures there. And then coming over and taking a look at the longer range here, I want to get to a different display and we can see this a little bit better. And so we talk about the MJO about every day when we're looking at the long range in the wintertime because we want to understand what it's doing. It helps influence the pattern. Yesterday, what were the models showing? You remember if you saw the video yesterday, you saw the models going like this. They were taking it here and going right in the middle. Look at that. That's a technical meteorological sound, by the way. That's when something happens you don't really like. So we've got the MJA diving in here. This is the GFS. If we look at the European, it had the same thing yesterday, but what's happening today? So I drew that arrow just to show you a little bit of a contrast. What's happening today? It still wants to kind of sneak toward, as we go out here, this is the 5th of March, by the way. It wants to sneak toward the circle. And it probably makes sense in case you weren't here yesterday for me to explain this. So when this line here, this shows the area of convection. This is just a representation of the strength of the convection in the tropical Pacific. When this line is out here in these zones, it's a pretty strong area of convection. When it starts to go into the center here, that means it's dying off and it has less potential to influence the pattern. And so yesterday we saw both models kind of diving the MJO into the circle of death, we call this, so it's dying. But today they're still outside. The GFS kind of tries to take it in there, and so does the European at the end. But we've seen these models. I've watched these models. I'm watching this every day. They're trying to kill this wave too quickly. So if this wave can stay strong and strong enough and get into phase 2 and 3, that potentially can influence the pattern to a more these are the cold phases, 8, 1, 2, 3 in the wintertime, and it could potentially turn the pattern around to be something a little bit more favorable for cold and snow in the east. Out west, you want it over here if you're looking for snow. So what do we see? How do we see that reflected? We'll go back to our other display. And so this is the cold air. This is the European now. Okay, I'm going to show you just the European deterministic model. Let's see what it does. So over the next couple of days, we got that cold air in the plains. Look at that. It's piling in here, just plunging into the middle of the country. Off the scale anomalies, 850. This is 850 anomalies. So this is very, very cold air. Look at that. We call this Barney. Barney, the big blue or purple, whatever he is. I don't even know. I never watched Barney, but I know about Barney. Big purple things coming in, is big purple anomalies. So when we see that, we call that Barney colors. Anyway, that Barney's coming down. He kind of fades out over time, and then we get these green colors. Very cold still, and that's going to fade out. We get this big moderating trend. Look at that. So big warm anomalies. Now much of the country warms up for a little bit, and then what happens? Boom. Big ridge in the west goes up, a trough in the east takes place, and you get the cold air coming in, one shot after another. Barney comes back into the northeast, very, very cold. That's the European deterministic run, and then it sort of says, hey, ridge time in the east, trough time in the west. I don't usually like to look at deterministic models. I like to look at them, but I don't usually account for them in any kind of a forecast when we get well out into time, like we're at 2 weeks out here. There's too much variability in the pattern, so we'll use ensembles for that. And if we look at the European ensemble height map, what happens up at 18,000, 20,000 feet determines a lot of times what happens at the ground. And you see these blue anomalies. These would correlate to cold temperatures at the ground. Orange correlates to warmer temperatures at the ground. And so rolling this forward, this is 10 days out. We're going to move this on out. So this is the European ensemble from last night. And look at that, trough in the east, big ridge going up out here. When you see big ridges going up like this, that means cold air is diving straight out of the Arctic into the United States somewhere. And the way things appear to be shaping up is that we see, look at that, the European ensemble. This is all 51 members. Big trough in the center part of the country, in the eastern part of the country. If we get this, it's going to be really, really cold as we head into March. I talked about this about 2 weeks ago, how it looked like it was going to be a cold and kind of potentially stormy pattern as we worked into March. And maybe through the first half of March, we could see bouts of cold and snow. And certainly if we see this play out, we're going to have plenty of opportunities to maybe track another winter storm or two. And this is the 850 anomaly map for the European ensemble. And it sort of bears out what you saw way up high in the atmosphere. Look at that big green color. I don't see any Barney on here yet, but we will if this starts to really unfold as we get closer in time. This is an ensemble mean. That means you got all these different members that run, and then this is averaged out. And so when you see these kind of colors on an ensemble mean, that's pretty impressive. So we'll be on the lookout for Barney making his return as we get back. And this is lastly the GFS ensemble. Let's see if it compares well. This is the American model to the European ensemble. And so start out with a big trough around D10, rolled out. Look at that, bam! Just a big, big trough. This ridge goes up here, Arctic air funneling into the pattern, and 10 days out, all the way out to day 16. Look at this. Big green colors show up everywhere across the northern part of the country. It wouldn't take much to filter this on all the way down toward the Gulf Coast. And folks, that is a wrap for today. So we're going to end with our trivia question. And you remember what it was? It was, what is the coldest temperature ever recorded on the Earth? And the answer is 128.6 degrees below zero. And that was measured at Vostok Station in Antarctica on July the 21st, 1983. That's some pretty cold weather. We see minus 60 wind chills, and we think it's cold in the United States, which it is. Don't know how long you would last outside at minus 128 degrees, but I would not want to find out. And with that, this is Cold Rain reminding you, stay inside if you're in the Midwest, stay bundled up, stay vigilant if you're in the Southeast driving around. There might be some slick spots on the roads tonight, and particularly in the morning tomorrow. So stay safe, stay warm, and make sure that you always remember, if you didn't like the weather that you saw today, there's always another model out there with better weather on it. It's your job to go and find it. With that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the afternoon, and we will see you back tomorrow.